just addicted to these arguments that people have constantly every day, calling people assholes and losers, and you're just carrying around all that bullshit with you all day.
That's exhausting.
Which is why I don't do it. I mean, I could go in on fucking every person that ever wronged me or this, that, and said bad things about me, like, and it's just like super unhealthy.
Well, we know people our age who are still doing that shit.
Of course.
Comics.
Marc Maron, don't say it.
I mean, I don't get it.
He's sad. He's sad. He wants other people to hurt. That's what it is.
It's just not charitable. It's
well, it's also he's pathologically jealous. Like he's like literally mentally ill. The thing is that Maron's podcast, which was #1, isn't even in the top 100 anymore. I don't even think it's in the top 200. It went away. And it went away not because he did anything. He didn't get arrested. There was no scandal. People just stopped being interested in it. And I think that hurts the most. And
why did they stop being interested?
It's not good.
All right, so it looks like Joe Rogan finally proved that he's not above shit talking, even though, of course, he still somehow tries to act like he's above it. You know, he goes from saying he doesn't hate on people who have said bad things about him to spending 20 minutes going off on Marc Maron. So he finally just snapped, and of course he's way more tuned in to what people are saying about him than he wants you to believe. And he's definitely not above drama, you know, because usually Rogan tries to avoid feeding into any beefs with other comics or saying anything bad about them, publicly at least. Like Maron, he's been trashing Joe for around a decade, and Rogan would rarely acknowledge it on his show. But it looks like Maron's last special, where he made a joke about Theo Von, and the media tour he did, where he was trashing the Rogan sphere every chance he had, really got to Joe, and now the gloves are off. I mean, he must have been holding this in for years, and he finally just ran out of patience because he was ready to go. Like, he was prepared. He mentioned a Reddit post that was criticizing Marc's podcast, and he knew this weird stat about his comedy shows, and he's aware of everything Marc said about him. So Rogan acts like he's above all the haters and doesn't care what people think about him. You know, it's all just noise. But it turns out he's human, and he's actually pretty invested in what Marc, and I'm sure a lot of other people, are saying about him and his crew. And even before this, that was already starting to show. Like last year, Joe thought Marc was trashing Bert Kreischer, and he sent Bert a message and told him he needs to stop being friends with Marc. So now I think just all the criticism of the Rogan sphere and the Austin comedy scene has reached a boiling point for Joe. And I think specifically comedians that have been mocking him and his crew got to him the most, because now it's not just Marc. You know, there are a good amount of prominent comedians that goof on him, which their opinions mean more to Joe than just a normal civilian's opinion. And Joe desperately wants to be seen as a respected comedian and be respected by comedians. So I think it hurts him the most when comics are trashing him. And now that that's kind of become mainstream and Maron's getting more attention for it than ever, Rogan finally felt the need to respond. You know, I think Rogan realized a lot of people are actually starting to agree with Marc now, and that's why he needs to point out that Marc is just a miserable and jealous hater. And also, it's hilarious, Rogan decided to respond right when Maron ended his podcast. I'm sure that's definitely another reason why he responded now. And Joe thinks Marc's podcast falling off is a big reason why he's so bitter, because apparently early on in podcasting, when Marc had the #1 podcast, Joe said that's when he's the nicest and he stopped talking shit about people. But then once Joe and other podcasters started passing him, then he went back to his old ways. And Joe said it's the same thing with stand-up. Marc has a falling out with everyone who does better than him. So Joe saying this stuff is definitely going to set Marc off. And he's probably going to want to bring his podcast back after he hears this, you know, just so he can rant about Joe every episode.
Like, do you understand? Marc, when he first started, when he was just first coming up, was friends with Mitch Hedberg, and then Mitch Hedberg hit, and he couldn't be friends with him anymore.
Really?
Yep. Stop being his friend. Same thing with Louis C.K. Louis C.K. and him were tight. Louis blew up. Marc didn't. He had to fucking hate him, and he turned on him. Talked shit about him openly. And then he became successful. And the years where Marc was successful were the best years of Marc, because Marc was fun. Mm-hmm. Like, I've had ups and downs with Marc. I've gone through this with him like 3 or 4 different times, where he gets upset at me, and then we talk, and then, are we good? We're good. Like, he likes to do that. He likes to talk shit about you, and then you confront him, and he says, you're right. And with me, my relationship with him was really complicated, because when I was an open micer, I was 21 years old, and I was just starting out. Marc gave me a compliment once that really helped me. He came up to me, and he goes, hey, man, you're really funny. He says, keep doing what you're doing. Don't listen to anybody else. Just keep doing what you're doing. I was like, wow, thank you.
That's his best side. That's the good side.
It's not all bad.
No.
And he was a young guy back then, right? So he was just being cool. And then over time, obviously I became more famous than him and more successful than him. And he does not like that. He fucking hates that. And the only time we were cool was when Marc was number one. So Marc, the podcast took off, and you got to realize it took off when he was deep into his 40s, right? And it was the number one podcast in the country. And he was on Rolling Stone magazine, and, you know, he had his own show on IFC, the Maron show, and he was fucking great. He was cool to hang with. He was fun because he didn't have to compare himself to anybody anymore because he was a success. Like, he could look at his own success. He was doing a television show. He had his podcast. Everything was great. And we were cool. Like, we were friends. Like, I'd see him. I'd give him a hug. I'd say, what's going on? We would talk. We're friendly at the store. We never hung out off site. But we were friendly. Like, we had pushed all the beef aside. And he even did my podcast. We had a great time. And then I started getting more successful, and then my podcast passed his. Then my podcast became number one, and then the Spotify deal, and that's when he started talking shit about me. So he started talking shit about me long before all this Trump stuff. This Trump stuff is just the most recent iteration of this bizarre thing that he does with people.
And I'm sure Marc's going to flip out over this, but also he's probably a little satisfied knowing he's really getting in Rogan's head. I mean, this goes on for almost 20 minutes. Which is wild because normally Rogan tries to avoid talking about any conflict between comedians. You know, he never really wants to call out comics anymore. Like he used to back in the day, you know, with Carlos Mencia and Jay Moore. Rogan ruined those guys. Like he used to be able to destroy careers. But I don't think he's really called out a comic like that since Jay Moore. So that's why this Maron beef is a pretty big deal. You know, shit's getting serious for Rogan. Because also at this point, why even address it? Like if Maron's a washed up comedian who's had a failed podcast and nobody listens to him now and he's just a hater, why not just let him fade into irrelevancy? So Rogan must think of him as more of a threat now than ever. And also Joe said he got really pissed about that joke Marc Maron made on his special about how Theo Von would do a podcast with Hitler. Because apparently that sent Theo into a spiral. So Marc is wreaking havoc on these people. Like, it's crazy. He has Joe Rogan now acting like sometimes jokes go too far, and Theo Von is off limits. You know, it's funny that Rogan will praise Tony Hinchcliffe nonstop for roasting random open micers, but then if a comic makes a joke about Theo Von, it's like the end of the world. So Rogan gets defensive about Theo here and says Marc just made the joke because he's jealous of Theo, which he probably is jealous of Theo, but also I think Rogan's kind of coping here because he also proves the joke was accurate. It's so funny. He's like, Marc said Theo would have Hitler on. Does he really believe that? Does he think that's true? Come on, Theo has anyone on his podcast. He'll talk to anyone.
He also lies. Like, one of the things he lied about, he did a podcast with Howie Mandel, and Howie Mandel asked him if he had problems with comedians. Like, no, I don't have any problems with any comedians. I've never had any problems with comedians. Like, what are you talking about? He's had a problem with every single comedian that's more successful than him. Bill Burr, Louis C.K., Dave Chappelle, me, Tony Hinchcliffe, everybody that passes him, all of a sudden, he talks about them on stage. And the Theo thing really drove me nuts because that sent Theo into a real spiral.
Did it?
Yeah. Yeah, well, Theo went into a spiral, and that was a big part of him getting attacked was Maron talking about him on his special, saying that he'd have Hitler on his podcast. Well, why is he saying that? Does he think that's true? Does he think that Theo has anybody on his fucking show, including Bernie Sanders?
He's learning. He wants to learn.
He'll talk to people, and he will talk to anybody on his podcast. That's not what the thing is. The thing is that Maron's podcast, which was number one, isn't even in the top 100 anymore. I don't even think it's in the top 200. It went away.
And I think Marc definitely is bitter. Like, he hates how successful Rogan's podcast and comedy career are. But some of his criticism is valid, and it's just hilarious that he's getting to Rogan this much. Like, Rogan even mentions a Reddit post he saw about how bad Marc's podcast is, which, if he's on there, he should also see what Reddit thinks of his podcast. You know, of course, every post about Rogan that's negative is from a jealous hater, but if it's a negative post about Marc Maron, it's legit criticism. But even though Rogan does get a lot of criticism, he obviously still is a way more successful podcaster than Marc, which I believe Marc is definitely bitter about. I think he even admits that.
People just stop being interested in it, and I think that hurts the most. And
why did they stop being interested?
It's not good. Here's a part of it. Like, the conversations that he has are fine, but the beginning of the podcast is he's like, self-indulgent rants about life and him doing things. And there's a thread dedicated on like Reddit where people fast forward to the time, like they give you the time stamp of when he's done ranting, so you could just get to the interview because nobody wants to hear it. Like it's an inside, joke, but it just that's. The reality is it's like Theo passed him, like rocketed past him, and now he has like the number 2 or number 3 podcast in the world.
And then Rogan starts trashing Maron's comedy career, like he was not holding back during this episode. And he mentions how he's pissed it never really took off and he feels like he deserves more success. And then Joe mentions how sad Maron's fans are and brings up that he has the record for most single seats sold to a comedy show. So Rogan was really prepared with ways to trash Maron. I mean, I don't know how you could pretend like he's above feeding into beefs or attacking comics anymore. I mean, I get why Rogan would want to respond to him and trash him. You know, it's fair game. But you can't act like you're above it all at the same time. I mean, like I played in the beginning, before he starts going on this rant, he's like, man, I could go off on every person that's ever wronged me, but I don't engage in that kind of thing. You know, it's just bad for you. It's unhealthy. And then he proceeds to just go off on Marc Maron for 20 minutes. You know, it's like he was trying his best to hold himself back, and he knew he shouldn't go off on Marc, but he just couldn't help it.
Maron never developed an audience for his comedy, and he always felt like he deserved it. And that's what drove him the most nuts. He always felt like he deserved it. But it's like you deserve what you get. You know what he has a record for? One of those ticket things, whether it's Ticketmaster or whatever one. Number 1 for selling single seats.
That's interesting.
That's not good.
Oh, that's really interesting. So
people with no friends.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Fuck.
Sad people. Sad people that identify with the way he behaves. But the proof is in the pudding. Do people come to see you? Do you put asses in seats? Do they enjoy the time? Or is it an angry bomb where you're on stage ranting about other comedians? Well, that's Maron. And he does that all the time. Tim Dillon was just saying he was doing that in L.A. the other day. Just ranting about all the comedians that are at the Riyadh Comedy Festival. Which is all, like legitimate area of criticism, if you can make it funny. Like, you're working for the Saudi government, and they've definitely done some stuff that's fucking horrible. The root of it all is not real. It's not that he cares so much that he wants everyone to do the right thing. That's not it. He's upset that all these people are getting attention. He's upset that it's very childish. But he'll make it look like, he's the righteous side, the left, the progressives. He's the voice now, and he's going to fucking, we got work to do. We got to get these fascists out. No, it's about him getting more attention. That's what it ultimately is all about. And that's unfortunate. And I'm not mad at him. And if I saw him and I talked to him, we were cool, I'd give him a hug.
Yeah, so maybe they could just hug it out and do a podcast together. And, we can't have the last line of defense fighting with each other like this. No, I'm kidding. I'm sure this is just going to escalate, and other comedians will probably chime in and start beefing. So it's definitely going to make comedy way more interesting. But let me know what you guys think. And if you want to hear about how Rogan's good friend Duncan Trussell and Theo Von have been spiraling recently, I've been covering that over on my Patreon. And I recently just posted a big video about how MAGA is really pissed at Joe now too, because they feel like he's turned on Trump. So the Rogan sphere is basically in shambles right now. And to stay updated, make sure you check out my Patreon. There'll be a link in the description.